Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm here with a good friend and fellow Kriya meditator, Ryan Strong. And the reason I decided to bring him on this Kriya Yoga channel, because many of you have asked me questions about how to maintain a family, or how can one continue to meditate when one has children? How can one stay on one's spiritual path when we have all these different responsibilities to family members? And personally, I do not have any children, so I could not speak to that with any experience. It would all be theoretical, which is kind of no use to a lot of people. So anyway, we've got Ryan Strong here. And before we get into the topic at hand, I would just like to introduce him. And Ryan, if you don't mind, what is your interest in spirituality? What got you involved in the path in the first place?
That's a good question. I was lucky. I was fortunate to be introduced to a picture of Yogananda when I was about 8 years old, and my mom had this book, Man's Eternal Quest, and so I had that with me up through my teenage years. And then I was about 17. I started to read it, and just realized I had a really deep urge and had a thirst to understand and to study Kriya. And so that's how I started out.
Okay. And so what is your profession? What do you do for work?
I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. So I have a clinic here in Sacramento where I see patients. I also see people over Skype nationally and internationally. I teach at the California College of Ayurveda and also at the Asheville School of Yoga and Massage.
Okay, excellent. So one of the things that we really need to get at with this whole idea is, first of all, setting up a meditation practice by itself is difficult for a lot of people. And that's one thing. Yeah. But now when we add on top of that, having responsibilities to raising a family and these sorts of things, that's a whole nother dynamic.
Yeah.
So what are some of the obstacles that you found? Because you didn't have children when you got involved in meditation practice,
no.
Is that correct? Okay. So just what are the first things that came up for you that were kind of the most difficult to approach once you started having kids?
Well, keeping a regular schedule was very hard in the beginning. But I have to say that almost having kids for me was kind of an anchor for my practice, because I was kind of wild and bounced around a lot and had a lot of interests, and I'd just be able to pursue those things pretty freely. But when you have children and responsibility, it has a stabilizing effect on your life. And so I found that to be kind of beneficial in some ways. Mm-hmm. But in the beginning, especially when we had a new baby, it was really hard to keep a regular practice. And so I think that what I had to do to be successful is I had to let go of my ideal practice, and I had to kind of go with the flow and take the meditation and take the time for myself and to do my kriyas when the opportunity presented itself. And that actually proved to be very helpful for me.
Right. Well, that was what essentially stimulated this whole idea of doing this conversation. Was a person who's subscribed to this channel wrote and said, I've got a 9-month-old, and how can we keep it together? How and when can I meditate? And I thought personally, well, you kind of got to do it when you can.
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying, because we have had friends that they're on the spiritual path and they've had young children, and it seems to be very difficult for them.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, the overall idea seems to be, when you get that moment, take that moment.
Take it.
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning, take it.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that though, has it altered, or does it alter how you do approach your practice? Because, we're taught to do a certain procedure, a certain method, maybe even set a certain amount of time. How do you work the meditation schedule when you are doing it when you can? Like, how do you work the practice?
Yeah, well, the very first thing is that, for me at least, and for people that I counsel, I find that sometimes, even if we have time to meditate, we don't have energy to do it, right? So you can close your eyes and you just don't have any focus, any concentration. And so one of the first things that I tried to do for myself, and that I needed to do for myself when I was in that situation, and what I counsel people to do, is to find time for themselves and well-being, because we have to have some energy, we have to have some ojas, right? Some physical and mental energy that will hold us in place while we meditate, so we can have focus.
Right.
And so I think that's the first step, is to try to find some time away from even meditating, even from doing your spiritual practice, to nurture your well-being. Mm-hmm. And then to find that time wherever it is, and to be aware when you approach your practice. And this is where it's also beneficial. It was beneficial for me to be in an experience where I had to find time. It was where before I may have been going through my practice kind of in a routine. You know, when that routine was thrown off, I was able to really be aware. And when I would go into meditation, I would be awake, because I wasn't just going through the process. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of having children and approaching your practice, because you have to come to your practice authentically and awake. Mm-hmm. If you're just waking up and sitting for 30 minutes and doing your kriyas, you might not be benefiting from them at all. Right, because you're just kind of sleepwalking through your practice.
So children for you has kind of shaken you out of a mechanical approach to it, and allowed you to realize, when I have this time, I really need to make the most use of it, versus if you just have your meditation scheduled and you think, well, I can do the kriyas, I can do the contemplative practices and whatnot, but you might not necessarily be so into it because you don't have these other pressures kind of making you appreciate the time. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. And when you get in there, you can be more engaged, where you can hold that awareness, and then even afterwards do the contemplation and really look at what your life is, look at what this thing that we are inside of, what is God, what am I, what is my relationship to it, what is creation, these type of questions that we must ask ourselves outside of meditating. And hopefully, I don't know about you, but I really see my practice and Kriya Yoga as a tool of awareness. Mm-hmm. And when we do our meditation, we do our kriyas, it's really helpful in clearing our awareness and quieting our mind and these type of things. But the real work is when we're at the bank, right? When we're driving down the road, right? When we're having little micro interactions with the teller or with the cashier. Mm-hmm. And can we stay aware of our true nature? Right. And that's, I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, because one of the things I've like to tell people is that our meditation practice, that's our training. That's like the person who's going to go climb the mountain. Well, they train to climb that mountain, but life is actually the climbing of the mountain. So it's wonderful to have a good, steady, strong meditation practice, but that's not the end of it. How we train in that time period allows us to see, how are we going to interact with the people in our lives? How are we going to be able to make the most of the time that we have? So I think that's a pretty good point.
Yeah, I think that's really what Kriya is. It's not, it is our meditation, it is our practices, but it's what we're doing outside of that. And are we making progress in our awareness and just staying aware of our nature?
Right. I do remember Mr. Davis talking about Yogananda's, one of his more advanced disciples, James Lynn, and mentioning that the reason he was so successful in meditation, the reason he was so successful with his spiritual practice, was because he was so successful in the business world, because he was a very well-off business individual. And when I think about having children, like you're discussing, family, business, well, these are all situations that kind of force you to be more efficient with your time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why they have that phrase that says, if you have something that you really need to get done, give it to someone who's really busy.
Busy, right?
Yeah. Because they're going to compartmentalize it. They're going to say, I need to get it done by this time, and they will, versus the individual who never really has anything to do or no responsibilities. They say, I'll get to it when I get around to it.
Right. When I feel up to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of what I'm hearing with your process is by having children, having a family, that's actually been an anchor, as you said, to allow you to go deeper into the process and probably to go deeper into the process faster.
Yeah.
Right. Does that seem accurate to you?
Yeah, I would say that it shook my practice up so much that it did allow me to, to deepen it, so to speak, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it was a real blessing.
Yeah. Well, that's they say children are blessings. I'm trying to avoid that blessing.
Well, there's a lot of nightmare with those blessings too, or hardship, but
right.
But it's pretty wonderful.
Well, thinking back, if you can remember back, because let's see, how old are your children now? They're what, 2?
Okay, so I have a 4-year-old.
4.
And I have a 16-year-old, so I have the spectrum.
Right. Okay. Well, think back as close as you can to the younger, when they're younger, just being born. And earlier you had mentioned that you had to kind of let go a lot of your expectations.
Yeah.
How it should be.
Yeah.
So if you could say something to those individuals, those new parents who really want to be serious and consistent with their meditation practice, but also are in that space where they're getting up at all hours of the night, they don't feel like they've ever had any sleep. Like, what would be the thing that you would say to them just to be realistic and help them get through that?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. And number one is whenever you can find the time, make it to meditate or just to breathe,
Mm-hmm.
just to focus in on your breath and, maybe pray or make that connection with your heart to the whole of reality. Just find those little micro moments. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is to see it as another a big way to surrender, right? Because ultimately we are in this creation and we think we have so much control. And when you have a child and you have all these type of things, you realize that we have to go with the flow, at least for quite a while, with the eating and sleeping schedules and the staying up all night and these type of things. And it's an opportunity to further surrender to that ultimate reality. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that and keep our consciousness slightly awake, then we will benefit from it, and that we're working with Kriya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it also allows us, or allows you, to develop just a greater sense of faith and a greater sense of trust.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you have a choice, but that would be the choice I'd recommend.
Right. Good. Yeah. All right. Well, let me get to my questions further down the line here. Well, so we've mainly been talking about, younger children, but you've got a 16-year-old as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that teenage years aren't as, they can also be difficult. Yeah. So again, being on this path, doing your best to live, the ideals, what kind of obstacles have you found, having a family as children get older, and how have you dealt with those things?
Oh, that's even a tougher question. I think that with teenagers, no matter doesn't matter how much Kriya you do, or where you're at in your evolution, so to speak. Your kids, especially your teenagers, will never think you're as important as you think you are. Yeah. And so that's helpful. That's real helpful. I think that we want to be engaged. We want to engage our children and be there for them in every way that we possibly can. But it's also really important that we do see that they're separate from us, and that we don't try to control them. We don't try to push our ideas onto them, mm-hmm. and that we try to let them be who they are. And I think it's kind of maybe a little bit off subject, but I find that was the most helpful thing for me in dealing with an angry teenager at some points. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How so? Like, was it just letting go of your own expectations and ego ideals, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that, because you have a child that is pretty compliant with what you ask them to do, and then they go into a place of independence. And for some parents, that can be really hard. And I did go through that place where it was hard, and then I got to the understanding where they're just themselves,
Right.
and I have to just kind of unattach from those expectations, and you become more of an advisor and a friend than someone that can tell them what to do. The quicker that we can understand that, the better off they are and that we are.
Right. It seems like that would be applicable to just family members and people in general.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. I agree with that. There's something interesting about teenagers, because when you're a parent, you're kind of able to dictate, this is when you sleep, this is when you wake, here's your food, and we're gonna go play, here's nap time. And then they get to a certain place in their development where it's, all that goes out the window. Yeah, you just gotta let go.
Right. So again, what I'm hearing is that the idea of participating in family life, it's really bringing up the whole idea of more deeply surrendering.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how does that, just out of curiosity, how does that dynamic or interplay, how does that roll over into your meditation practice? I mean, does it?
It does. Well, I mean, it absolutely can, because the more that we let go of, right? So the more that we let go of our sense of control, our sense of attachment or holding on to, the more we're able to let that stuff go, the freer we are. And not just like on a personal level, but also on a very mental level. It clears up the clutter in the mind. Right. When we no longer feel like we are in control or attached to. When we let that go, there's so much more freedom. And so that can be very powerful, very helpful. And sometimes you have to do it over and over again. It's not just like one day go, oh, I'm just going to let go. It's like, okay, this is part of my Kriya.
Right.
I'm going to continue to let go of my attachment to these things. Although I'm going to work for them, I'm going to try to do my best in these situations. But I'm going to just let go of the attachment to the outcomes or any sense of control.
Right. Well,
yeah, it's very helpful.
Right. In the Yoga Sutras, the second chapter where it talks about surrendering to the eternal self as being part of Kriya practice. So, you're describing that pretty well. And then even in the Gita, what you just mentioned about letting go of the fruits of your actions.
Yeah.
That the yogi is entitled to action only.
Yeah.
Not to the fruits or not to the results of those actions, because that's part of the bigger picture, the bigger scheme of things. And it seems like, it would be something that you have to consistently work on.
Absolutely.
Because it's hard, people want a sense of safety in the world. That's why a lot of people get involved in religion and spirituality, because they, in a sense, I've always found this fascinating. It's like what they really want is to control how their life is going to go.
Yeah.
Right. And someone asked me recently, well, can I control my life? Like when I become a spiritual master, can I control my life? And I had to chuckle because it seemed to me that the clearer you get, the more you realize you are not in control.
Yeah.
So the question arises for you is, how then does one maintain a state of consistent direction, keeping things together, having intention, having willpower, while riding that wave of surrender? Does this question make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you have to continually step back, right, until you're established in that awareness and that knowing where you maybe don't have to do the work as much, but you have to step back and you have to do the inner work, the inner insight, the inner contemplation, and really go deep, right? You can't just expect it to happen naturally. You have to do the work. And to continually do that work.
Right.
Yeah.
I like to think of it like a conversation. The clearer one gets, you move forward with your life and you have your ideas, the things you kind of want to accomplish or whatnot, but always checking back in as though you're having a conversation with God, divine consciousness. I'm going in this direction. So tuning in, figuring out intuitively, is this going to support it? And sometimes it can be as obvious as, someone just shutting you down, or having a situation that you want to experience and it just totally falls apart. That's a pretty clear conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people have suffering, because they're not able to hear what God or divine consciousness is saying. And I don't mean that like they're hearing voices.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more like the reason I think yogis possibly might have a little bit less difficulty in their life is because they're able to hear the guidance or the advice rather than having to run into a brick wall to say, no, you can't do that.
Right. And just being able to walk away and be like, I don't have any attachment to this outcome.
Right.
And that can be really hard. It can be really hard. But it's funny you say that, because there's a maybe it's a platitude I heard once, but I often use it, is that rejection is protection. And so whenever something you're going to do that doesn't work out, you're going for a job or someone that you liked or in love with, it doesn't work out, you have to sort of see that as is for your highest good.
Right.
And that if you can let go of those things, then you're much more free without them, and something better is coming. And sometimes I get flack for that type of ultimate optimism, but I find that it's very supportive to think that way,
yeah,
to live your life that way.
Well, the alternative
right,
is what, that there's no support. And either way, it seems to me that living as though life does have your best interest at heart, whether you like it or not. And that's part of the other issue I found, which we may be able to get into today, that I think maybe family brings up for people, especially on the spiritual path, is that there is suffering in the world.
Yeah,
that's just a part of life. And to think that, again, we are able to control and make everything fit our ideals all the time, that's kind of a bit of a spiritual egotism in a sense, which, if you want to be that way, fine. But in the end, it definitely leads more to pain.
It does.
And it would seem to me that, with the family and having these different individuals to interact with, to be responsible for, that would really bring immediately into your awareness, as you were describing, that they need to be their own people. They need to do their own things. If things go well, fantastic. If they don't, you deal with it as best you can. When you've got time to meditate, you meditate. When you don't, you take care of what's right in front of you.
Yeah.
So, the whole idea just seems to be one of learning to be fluid and dynamic while staying attuned to that inner sense of clarity or that inner sense of stillness, just in any situation.
Yeah. Like you're saying, is going through that process of letting go, like from how much money we have in our bank account, from a certain car that we want to drive, our house maintenance, to our family members, and it just goes into every direction. And when we can step back and go, well, I don't really have control over this, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to keep working towards what I want and I want to see happen. And I'm going to do my best, but I'm going to let go.
Right.
And then you feel so much better. You feel free.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have to keep doing that to a certain point until you're established in that. But it's good, to let that go, especially with family members. I have 3 sisters, and it was one of the biggest lessons I ever learned, was to stop giving them advice. Mm-hmm. Big brother, do this, you do that, do this, And now I'm like, I just love you, and if there's something I can do to help you, I'll do it. But I don't want to give you advice, because that leads down to that path of suffering.
Right. Well, they have their own lives to live,
Yeah.
And we've been talking a lot about kids. I've been married quite a long time, so I can relate to this a little bit. But one of the things that also comes up a lot for people, and this might be the second to last question we have for today, but one of the things that comes up a lot for people is, my spouse isn't interested in meditation, or my spouse isn't interested in, Kriya or the kind of spirituality I'm interested in. And I remember I brought that up to Mr. Davis one time, and he just pretty much told me, he said, just leave her alone, Ryan. He said, she's got her own path, she meditates when she meditates, just leave her alone. And, she's a regular meditator. So I was just being young and fanatical about the whole thing. So in your experience, do you ever hear people having these same kind of thoughts? And if so, what do you say to them, or how do you counsel them?
Right. So I do, and I hear it all the time. And it's the same situation that you have, where I just go back to what Roy, one time it was when I first met my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I was out on retreat, and without even asking Mr. Davis, he kind of just came up and he said, as long as she respects your practices, it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important, right? Not everybody's on the same path. I ultimately believe that all true enlightenment paths are essentially the same paths of awareness of our true nature.
Right.
And if our spouse or our loved one, if they're not on that same path, as long as they respect us and what we're trying to do and give us space for that, then I think we're supported.
Right.
And ultimately, when I was first looking for someone that would match me on that level, I was really, that was from an ego kind of place, right? I wanted someone that mirrored me because I wanted them to be on my path, or
I understand.
yeah. So like, ultimately that's a trap,
Mm-hmm.
to think like that. Although it's nice to have someone who's on a similar path, but.
Well, ultimately, it seems like as long as, like you were mentioning, you respect one another.
Yeah.
And you're able to say, look, this is important to me, so I'm going to explore this, and whatever's important to you, you can explore this. So, the happiness of the family kind of comes down to, are you able to support each other in life?
Yeah.
And respectfully so.
Yeah.
And you don't have to listen to the same kind of music. You don't have to have the same, spiritual teacher, as long as you're walking together in the same direction. It seems like that's the most important thing.
I would agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, let's see. I've got one more question here. I think I do, at least. I believe you already touched upon this. So if you have any final thoughts on it, I'm happy to hear them. So the idea with having a family, being the householder, many people say renounce everything for God and things of that nature. And it sounds to me that you're saying that by you having a family, that's actually helped you to surrender more, to let go of your attachment to your ego more, that it might be that being a family man or family person, that can actually contribute quite a lot to your spiritual growth. You don't have to renounce everything. You find that to be true?
I do. And I think that, the idea of renouncing is very special, and it can be very helpful. But there has to be the internal work,
right?
Because we could renounce sex, drugs, alcohol. All these, even worldly life or whatever it is, and we can just remove them, and then we can go put ourselves in a little room away from all these things. But as long as they're still pulling at us inwardly, then we're just removing ourselves from them. We're not truly renouncing.
Right.
To renounce, I think we have to really do the inward work, where we're detaching ourselves from it, where it's not pulling at us anymore, so that we're free from it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to family, I think that we can find that balance where we're engaged, we're enjoying our children, we're enjoying our life, right? We're staying aware of ourselves consciously in creation, or however you want to put it, and not trying to grab onto it, because we're just, everything's changing constantly. There's nothing we can hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to, for me, that's a real amazing thing to realize, is that you can't hold on to anything except for God, or except for the universe, however you want to put it. That's the only thing that is real.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to work for our family, work for our children, do our best for them, enjoy them, but ultimately yoke ourselves to God, or to creation.
Right. Yes.
Otherwise, like you said, we suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And maybe if you're up for it, we can do it again.
I'd love to.
So if people want to find out more about your work, more about your connection to the Kriya Yoga tradition, where might they find that?
Excellent. So if you want to find out more about Roy Eugene Davis, go ahead and just Google the Center for Spiritual Awareness, Roy Eugene Davis, and you'll find his website. And if you would like to get a hold of me, you can reach me at strongveda@gmail.com, and it's strong, STRONG, V as in Victor, EDA@gmail.com, or sorry, yeah, gmail.com. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Mr. Davis is a direct descendant, or disciple, I should say, not descendant, of Paramahansa Yogananda. So what that means, those of you who don't know, is that he actually studied with Paramahansa Yogananda, learned with him, had interaction with him face to face, which is important because I don't believe there are too many folks like that these days.
Very few now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a whole lot, Ryan, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.